Hi, welcome back to another episode of Cold String Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's video, we're going to keep on working on the 35 pickup box. There's still quite a few more things to do. At the end of last week's video, I made the hinges for the tailgate. So the first thing I'm going to work on is actually mounting the tailgate and those hinges on the back of the box. In a previous episode, we modified this back piece to put these little indentations here. This is where those hinges are going to go. There's going to be a 1/4-inch hole going all the way through here with carriage bolts, two of them, holding the hinges in place. I've got to trim off the bottom of the stake pockets here because that's going to be flat. And then the other thing I was asked to do, we did a box for a 35 or a 36. We did a modification to it, put the bed wood into it. And what we did was we made a battery box that actually fit down in between the sub rails here. So it's the same gentleman that owned that one, and he owns this one as well. So what he'd like for us to do is do the same thing, build a battery box so it fits down inside of here. And then he dropped off some rough birch wood that he wants us to make the bed wood out of. So I don't know how much of that we're going to do this week, but we're going to do as much as we can. At the minimum, I'm going to get the tailgate in, and we'll start on the other things. So follow along. So I made a little progress today on the 35 bed. We've got the tailgate hinges mounted on the back of it now. I wasn't quite sure how they mounted on, so I actually cheated on myself. I went back and looked at a 35-36 bed that we did from the same gentleman that owns this one. He had brought us a reproduction painted one, and we installed bedwood into it, and we put a battery box like we will on this one as well. And I was able to go back and look through the videos and see how the hinges were actually attached. And in that video, we didn't have the wood into it. So one of the things in that video, we just had short 20 nuts and bolts that went through the sheet metal. But in this case here, because I now have over there the original piece that went through, I now know that the bolts, at least the bottom bolt on the hinge actually goes all the way through, and it comes through the back, and it basically pinches the wood in between this. And it also holds this block in place so that when the bolt goes through it, it gives it some strength and tightens things up. So figured that out. What I started with was that I took a measurement off of the bottom of the original one. I figured out, I took an average distance between the top and this point here on all three. It turned out to be, I think it was exactly 2 inches. So that's good indication that it's a nice round number, and it was probably the way that it was made. So we started with drilling this hole on the back of the pickup bed, dead center here. And then I located the first hinge. In. Then I assembled the tailgate, put the other hinges onto it, and then just marked off where the other holes were. So I wanted to have the hinges centered, the tailgate centered, and then hinges on the same plane, obviously. So we got that now. Just little 20 bolts across the top, and then 2-inch ones right there that go all the way through. I'll probably put a little bit longer ones on with some locking nuts, but right now the tailgate goes up and down like it's supposed to. So what we'll do next, I will either work on planing up some of the bed wood because we've got some rough wood in the shop. I'll probably start on that. I'll more than likely cut the wood up to the rough dimensions. I'll leave probably 1/8 of an inch onto it and let it dry a little in the shop. Then I'm going to come back out here, and then we'll start working on putting the battery box. The battery box is going to sit. If you'll notice, there's already some drilled holes here. The battery box is most likely going to sit here. So this board should be solid. And then these two center pieces here, this is where I'll show you. We'll cut the boards out and make them removable. But first, I'm going to plane some wood, and then we'll start making the battery box that'll fit in there. So here's the rough boards we're going to be working with. In the past, I've used oak and ash. You can use maple and you can use yellow birch as well. These boards happen to be some live sawn yellow birch boards that were sawn on a circular sawmill quite a long time ago. If you can see these kind of line, you can see the circular cuts from the saw cutting it, but also if you notice here, you can see these roughness in that. This actually has some character to it, something that we would call flame birch or curly birch. What we need to do though, between these 5 boards, is that we need to make 6 boards that are 7 1/4 inches wide, all dressed up. So it's kind of looking as though I am going to be able to get 2 boards out of each one of these large boards. They are actually wide enough. They're quite wide. It's unusual these days. I mean, it's an 18-inch wide board. Going to lose a little bit on the outside edges there because of the bark. But even though this has bark onto it, it is very straight. So what I'm going to do is probably take a line. I'm going to snap a line down the center of this. We'll put it on a table saw, split it in half. Then I'll rough it up and plane it down probably to 7/8. Then I'm going to leave it in the shop here just to let it acclimate a little bit because it's a little on the wet side. It's 12 to 14%. When I put the moisture meter onto it, for wood that's in a truck that's going to be outside, you kind of want it to be in the 10 to 12% range. So I'm going to creep in on this when I plane it. So we'll plane it down to 7/8 sticks first. I'll let it sit for a while, and then if there's no cupping or no movement or anything like that, after about a week, I will probably finish it down to the 3/4 inch. So these boards will probably not be finished on this episode just because I don't want to get them, I don't want to risk them warping and stuff. So we'll take it easy on this. But anyways, gonna rough these out and we'll show you what we're working with, and hopefully we get at least six nice boards to fit in a bed of the 35. So there's the end result of about 2 hours of planing and cutting. We've now got 6 boards that I'll rough down to basically 1/8 plus material. So we need the boards to be 7 1/4 and 7 1/2. Made them 7 3/8 and 7 5/8 widths, and I left them at 7/8 thick. Ultimately, we're going to probably thickness sand them on a thickness sander down to 3/4 of an inch thick. But what I'm going to do is let them rest for a while, see if there's any kind of warping. I do have one board that's got a little bit of a cup this way, but it's not twisted this way. I can deal with that because we're going to be basically using the metal strips to apply pressure to hold them down. I don't think that's going to be an issue. And then we've got a couple pieces left over here that I ultimately need to, there's some thin strips that go across and along the sides of the bed as well. We've got to make those. We'll make those out of this. These are the pieces left over, plus I've been cutting some of the strips up. We'll use those to light fires in the garage. Filled up 2 bags of shavings that came off of it, plus that is full as well. So anyways, it took a bit to get it down. Fortunately, the wood was actually quite thick, so lots of room to try and correct any warpage or any kind of twists into it. But for now, we're going to leave that alone. We're going to let it sit for about a week. So we won't be coming back to the wood for the 35 bed until the next episode. But right now we're going to go back out into the shop, or the metal shop, the garage, and work on the battery box. On last week's video, I introduced putting the wiring kit into the Camera Lady's Roadster. One of the things I wanted to do was mount that small little 12 circuit fuse box up underneath the dash. And one thing I described was that I wanted to use the original dash tunnel mounting bolts in the firewall to make a bracket that would bolt on the inside and have bolts on the outside, so it would look like we've got an original kind of dash. But I wanted to make a sheet metal piece that went across the inside that I would then mount the 12 circuit fuse box onto. So what you see here is a piece of Bristol board that I put on the inside of the firewall. Poked holes into it where the 6 mounting holes were in the firewall. And this is approximately where we want to put the fuse box. So this back half of the fuse box, it looks like it would slide into a piece of sheet metal. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little piece of sheet metal that goes on, this mounts up to, which will then mount on this piece of sheet metal we're going to make to go on the firewall. The reason why I want to do this, I want to be able to put this on the inside of the firewall. I'm going to put a strip of metal across here with a bunch of holes into it so that I'll be able to take all the wires, run them across this, and then I'll be able to put ties onto it. So I don't have all the wires kind of dangling and hanging around. So anyways, I'm going to cut this piece of sheet metal out. I'll start mocking this up and I will show you what I mean. So here's the wiring harness. There is the fuse box that's going to fit into that little piece of plastic that I showed you a couple seconds ago. And then up inside there, there's the original holes, 1, 2, 3. And then over on the other side, you can see the light shining through the other 3. So that's the pattern that we're going to hook that piece of sheet metal up to, that we're going to bolt onto the wall and basically use that as our mounting station or mounting pad for the wiring harness, and then actually be able to take some of these wires and then use like tie wraps or whatever to pull it up against it and keep it all nice and neat up underneath the dash. So finally getting around to working on the Camera Lady's Roadster. This is the bracket that I'm talking about to mount the fuse box, and then actually I'm going to run a piece of tubing or a piece of bar, like round bar stock across this section of the sheet metal. That way I'll be able to run the wiring harness across it and attach some wires up against the firewall. It's one of those things that you never plan for it too far. Well, when I don't plan for it when I'm building the cars, and you really need to plan where you're going to put the wiring, where you're going to connect the wiring, where you're going to run the wiring, where you're going to hang the harnesses from, and it's usually an afterthought most of the time. And it was in this case here too, but I think, well, partially, I intentionally left the holes in the firewall so that I could attach something from the inside, but I just never built it till now. So right there, you can see like a raised up section. So what'll happen, that section there is where I'm going to pop rivet the back half of the fuse block, and then this fuse block snaps into that and stays in place. So I only drilled 2 of the holes for the firewall. I'm gonna drill the other 4 because they are on position. I just want to check it, because once I did that little bead roll around there to stiffen that up, the material shrunk a little bit. So I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't making big oval holes. So I'll re-drill those holes. I'm going to drill the holes for the pop rivets. We're going to run a bar across there to attach the harness to, and then put a coat of black paint onto it before we put it in place. Well, as promised, today I'm going to work on the Camera Lady's Roadster. The black panel is all painted up and I've got it installed now. Right there, way up top, you can see the fuse panel right there. Got it bolted to the firewall with a couple bolts right now. Ordered some stainless steel ones in, which I will install later. And what I've done is I've started to run some of the wiring. The harnesses you see hanging right here are for the dimmer switch, and they'll be hooked up to the GM column. This line here with this great big bundle of wire is the front lights. This one here is the back lights, and then these 3 dangling out of the dash are the dash lights, or the dash stuff for the gauges, for the light switch and the ignition switch. It looks like a lot of wiring here, but it's really not. I've already put the wires through to the front and wired everything up to the engine. We've got the coil hooked up. I like to use this plastic stuff. I mean, it's kind of not hot roddy, but more automotive. Reason being is it just prevents wires from being chafed. So although we have these nice cloth covered wires here, which are, you know, kind of cool and nostalgia, I'm still going to put the plastic wire protectors all the way around. So the coil's hooked up, the alternator's hooked up, the starter's hooked up, everything in the front here. Now, that's how much excess wires I've cut off. I've cut quite a bit of it off so far. Now, the one thing about the wires, like I said, I really like them. But what you've got to do is you try and focus there. You've got to cut the wire here with an X-Acto knife. And it frays quite easily. And then you've got to take a Bic lighter or a heat gun or something like that. I just used a Bic lighter. And then melt the frayed edges, because when you go to put the end pieces around it, it'll push back easily. So basically cut that with a razor blade, pull everything off, then use the Bic lighter to melt it, and then twirl it with your fingers. That way it doesn't slide back onto the plastic wire underneath. And then you get a pretty decent fit for the wire connector and stuff. I always overkill and double crimp mine. Give them a really good yank after I put them, well, not too hard, but a significant tug onto it to make sure everything is set. Gone over the wiring before in the past. I like to use the ratcheting crimper that you can get from any number of places. You can use the hand crimper too. I know lots of guys use it, but I find the ratcheting crimper is the best thing. So anyways, got one harness hooked up. We're going to carry on and see what else we can do for this episode, but the wiring has started on the Camera Ladies Roadster. Today we're back out in the shop again. I'm going to work on the battery box, which is going to mount approximately where my finger is between these two subrail pieces of the bed. We've done this before. We did it on another 35 Ford pickup bed that we did the battery box in. We'll try and link that at the end of this video, but essentially we're doing the exact same thing here. Making a battery box out of 125 wall or 1/8 wall thick plate. Cut it out there and fully welding it. So the box is going to be 9 by 9 by 13, which is a little bit bigger than what we need. But we don't know what size battery the owner is going to use, as we did the last time. So basically I make this big enough so that you could fit like an F-150 battery into it, which I commonly use myself. I will actually make a hold down piece that'll go across here with 2 bolts going into the corners. But for now, just finished welding that up. Gonna let it cool down a bit. We'll dress it up, and then I'll start making the supports out of this 3/4 square tubing. So anyway, follow along. We're gonna get the battery box into the 35 pickup bed. So there's the battery box mounted in between the sub rails of the box. Like I said, it's kind of the same way that I did it before when I did another 35 bed. I put the wood into it. I didn't make the bed, but the full-size bed came and we put the wood into it and adapted a battery box on the floor. What I've done, I did not weld these 3/4 inch square tubing brackets to the sub rails, simply because I don't know where the exhaust and everything is going through on the chassis that this car is going on. For the moment, what I've done, I've justified it close to the center in case they want to run an exhaust through this side. The flip side, if ultimately when this gets finished, this could actually be moved over closer to the side if they want to run the exhaust on the other side. There's not much room that you can go this way, but what we wanted to do was design it in such a way so that the battery box could move side to side if it needed to. There's only so much you can do without the actual chassis here. because you don't want to block off your ability to run the exhaust or bump into the drive shaft. Now on the positive side though too, the battery box is actually sitting quite high. There should be enough room to run the exhaust underneath it if they wanted to, but for now this is approximately where we put it on the other box. So this is where we're going to put it on this one, and then like I said, ultimately if it needs to be adjusted left or right, it can be. What I've got to do next, I've got to put some bolts through this to hold the battery box in place, and then build the battery hold down bracket as well, which kind of the plan is actually to take a piece of angle iron, much like we did with the Camera Lady's Roadster, and then just use some long threaded rods to basically pull the battery down on an angle. The battery box is oversized on purpose because I really don't know what size battery that's going to be used in this. We wanted to leave some flexibility to use whatever battery the owner had on hand. So anyways, we're on to the next task. Well, that's it for another week of Coldstream Rod Shop. In this week's video, we worked on the 35 pickup bed, got the tailgate on, we've got a battery box made and pretty much installed, and then we started dressing down the wood for the bed. And then I finally got to do some work on the Camera Lady's Roadster. We've got the fuse panel in, starting to run some wires, got a few wires hooked up, but that kind of wraps it up for this week. That took up most of our time. Video is a little shorter than what we would like, but can only do so much. That's it. So anyways, hopefully you enjoyed. If you have any questions, of course, send us comments. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Come on back next week and see what we're up to.